Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central podcast, a podcast that is now entirely supportive of 20-minute red cards for this week at least. On this episode, we'll be picking apart Cardiff's bonus point win over the Lions, some sharp attack, physical defence, Cornel van Zil's first game in the hot seat, and having a look at Ben Thomas's sending off. There's also quite a sad rags corner, the WRU's meeting with CF10 Arms Park Rugby Trust, and a look ahead to Munster, along with the return of a prodigal son. Joining me on the panel this week, we've got Fraser Stroud. Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. Getting a bit more sleep, so a bit more switched on, which is
It's
nice.
that's what we like, just for the season starting.
Yeah.
Steve Coombs, Steve, how are you?
Very well, feeling very encouraged more than last week anyway.
Good stuff. And making his first pod appearance of the season after an extended summer break, the Nick Williams of the podcast who just turns up when he likes Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm not the prodigal son that's returning. Just so that nobody's disappointed, there is news.
Good stuff. Right, we'll start then on Saturday night at the Arms Park. Cardiff beat the Lions 33-20. Early tries from Ben Thomas and Cam Winnett gave Cardiff the lead before a controversial red card for Thomas allowed Lions back into it. It was 14-13 at the break, which became 14-20 early in the second half. But upon returning to 15 men, Cardiff kicked on again. Alex Mann scored an Evan Lloyd brace. Secured the bonus point win just as the heavens opened in the capital. We had a few three-word thoughts after the game. Mark said Beauty and Beast, which I think is also the Disney title if you go up north as well. They just dropped the. RJ Watt said much deserved victory. Tamsin said it's a start. Harley of this parish said never in doubt. Rob, an enjoyable start. Gareth, that'll fucking do, was Paul went with thank fucking Christ in the swearing stakes. And Ben finished it with we're back, baby. Fraser, coming to you first, general thoughts on the game?
I think I came out of it feeling pretty positive, to be honest. I think we started really well, and our attack was incredibly fluid. I mean, we'll touch upon like specifics, I guess, but I think like Teddy Williams was unbelievable throughout the game, and just the cohesion between backs and forwards was really impressive. And there was like a speed of ruck was really good, and the two tries we scored in the first half were great. It just looked easy because we just had space and it just like ran through. Like Ben Thomas and Winnett's tries were just quite easy across the line, but it was just continuity of play and timing of pass, and everyone seemed to know what they're doing. And then obviously the red card affected things, but it did feel very much like the red card, we dealt with that and then back to normality. And it was just kind of easy. It felt quite easy when we were at 15 men, and Lions weren't really threatening that much. The defense seemed pretty solid. I think maybe close to the line, their physicality kind of impacted us a bit. Um, but yeah, I was pretty impressed, and I felt pretty good afterwards. And I don't think I felt that worried about what was happening. It just seemed like we were in control. Even when we were down to 14, it felt like we could get back into this, and it wasn't too far away from us. And then obviously we showed we could. I think, yeah, the only thing I would raise is a shame she didn't get his 100% kicking. His kicking was on point, and it's the last fucking conversion he didn't get. I wanted to like praise him because obviously his kicking's been pretty shocking. So that was the downside, and I think our line out and set piece were a little bit shaky was one of the concerns. But overall, I think there's some great performances, and we just looked like everyone knew what they're doing, which is really impressive.
Steve, your general thoughts?
Uh, First of all, I think that's £3 already in the swear jar, and none of this was a me, which surprises me. Um, yeah, I was quite despondent in the run up to the game because I'd been feeling really positive about us this season. I mean, if separating it from the whole political situation as much as possible, because we've been building a team over, well, this is the third season now. And with Matt Sherritt leaving the way he did 5 days before, I was thinking, is that going to like tear apart all the momentum and everything we've been building? But that performance showed that there can just be continuity now. That I think it demonstrates that the coaching staff, with the preparation they've had over the summer, can just keep things ticking along. The kind of attacking intent and quality we showed in that pre-season game against Leinster. I mean, it's difficult to tell from pre-season games, but that was there again in this game. And where we hit a few rocks, like the red card, we handled it really well, and I'm not sure in previous situations we wouldn't have let that get to us. So yeah, really encouraging, and there's some individual performances in there that are really good and really solid, and you kind of take them for granted now, which I think is credit to what Matt Sherritt's done over the past couple of years.
Absolutely. Simon, your general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can see what we would want. Well, I think what we talked about was wanting to see like progression this season, and going. And I think you definitely saw that. You saw it, as you said, Steve. You saw it in pre-season, but you're never quite sure. We weren't playing the strongest sides, although I still think, as you said on the pod previously, going to Leinster and beating any side in Ireland is a good result. But it just all came. You know, if ever a match where you've got a sending off can be described as straightforward, it felt very straightforward. You take out that 20 minutes, where I think the Lions only scored like 10 points in that 20-minute period. I think as soon as we went back up to 15, we went back on the front foot and didn't let them in at all. I haven't looked at the stats, but their 22 entries must have been small, minimal. Did a lot between like the halfway line and the 22 in both halves, but didn't really break through. I thought the defence was really clever. We didn't over compete, as we've talked about, that we think that's the way they're going to go, and just trusted the kind of individual tacklers to make a difference. So I think, yeah, it was it felt worryingly non-worrying. That's mangling my words. Bit of pre-season I've got to get out of my system, but it just felt very straightforward once we went back up to 15. Didn't feel like we were gonna, once we went ahead again, which obviously last season we went ahead against them, they lost a player and we had to defend our own line for like the last 5 minutes. It never felt like they were going to lay a glove on us, and I don't know whether that's the quality of the Lions in general, but again, you beat what's in front of you. We've come away with 5 points. You know, I think there's a lot to be positive about the performance and things to work on, but there's definitely progression from last season to this. The structure, the attacking structure, I thought was outstanding.
Charlie's 3-word thoughts with the defence won that. Stat line is on the URC website anyway, which varies quite wildly from the Rugby Pass website. I don't know if they watch slightly different games. But 137 tackles at 84%. We conceded just 3 line breaks and only 2 tries, and won 10 turnovers, which was the most of any team across the URC on the weekend. Yeah, Fraser, is that preseason focus on the defence paying off, which was spoken about quite a lot by the coaches, and does it also perhaps point that it's quite a smart decision to sort of leave Gethin as just in charge of the defence and promote Cornel van Zyl as head coach as well, so that Gethin can continue to improve that defence throughout the season?
Yeah, I think I can't argue with that. I think the defence is really solid. Like as Simon mentioned, they were kind of stuck between the halfway and the 22, not really getting anywhere. It didn't really make that many breaks. Obviously, yeah, there's the question about like, were Lions a little bit blunt in attack generally? Did they really pose that much of a threat? And I think the next couple of matches, might still be a really good insight into how strong our defense is. But I thought it was good. We looked physical. There were some strong hits going in, and we just kind of marshaled what was happening, and yeah, didn't overcommit to anything. And it just seemed kind of like we had it all. It was calm. I think we were like calmly managing what was happening, and that's quite impressive to see. And I guess having Geffen just continued working on that, building on that is a good focus. And then we'll see what Cornel van Zyl can do as a head coach. But I think you could argue that's a good decision. So I was pretty impressed.
I think Millard did a great job at 13 as well. You know, we're used to seeing Ray out there, and he wasn't just kind of blitzing blindly, kind of running up, but his timing of that was really putting pressure on them in terms of once it got beyond 10 into the centres, Millard was usually on them. They also did this weird short line out a few times where they passed to the front that just allowed us to get off the blocks quickly. And by the time it had got into their midfield, our midfield was just on top of them. So I thought I thought Millard had an excellent game. It wasn't the offloads, and we know what he can do going forward, but we're worried about that 13 channel, and worried about, have been a bit worried about, can he, live up to those that previously worn that jersey. I thought he was excellent defensively. He panicked them, and I think that's where a lot of those turnovers came from. They panicked and they spilt the ball. There was no kind of reason to spill the ball. It wasn't particularly wet during the start of the game, but he was just up in their faces, and really sensibly as well, not just blindly blitzing. But as you say, Fraser, maybe better teams do the, kind of pull back a little bit and we get caught. Why they weren't chipping over because we were coming up quickly is beyond me. So it does suggest some kind of limitations maybe in their tactical approach.
I think, yeah, Lions weren't great. They're not exactly inventive. It's like big one-up runners. But then that is the type of team that typically we have struggled against.
Yeah.
Big, powerful sides who just grind us down over the 80 minutes. And they didn't grind us down. We as you say, there were plenty of occasions where we panicked them. And yeah, there will be tougher games, but I think if anything, the scoreline probably flattered Lions a bit.
Switching to the attack, then the attacking stat line, Cardiff made 345 metres, beat 15 defenders, made 14 line breaks, 11 offloads, and scored 5 tries. Simon Thomas, the journalist, tweeted after the game that the opening try, finished off by Ben Thomas, went through 31 sets of Cardiff hands before getting over the try line. A couple of three-word thoughts, with Rob saying loving the intent and Hopsy saying playing with speed. Steve, when I think back to the last few years of our round one games, particularly that Zebra one last year, which was a hell of a slog of an 80 minutes, we haven't always looked like a side that's ready to get going from the start in round one. But that was probably up there with one of the best the attackers looked in early part of the season for a few years.
Definitely. I mean, if you think back 2 years to, it was Benetton, and that was a performance that I remember being fiery, players clearly very up for it, but not really together, which is what you'd expect because Sherratt was putting together a squad pretty much from scratch, probably less than 2 months before that game, the squad and the coaching staff from scratch. Then last year against Zebra, it was a 5-pointer, but a pretty unconvincing performance. But then it was going to be because there were so many new players coming in, so many new combinations. It did take us a while to get going last season, which was always going to be the case. Now you've got a squad which essentially has been together for a while now. The combinations have bedded in, but where you've got new players coming in, like Basham can just slot straight into a very settled team. And so, yeah, going forward, we looked like a settled unit, and we haven't had that at the start of the season for a while now. And it was very impressive for a first run out with the ball. There's the intent that Sherratt has always wanted us to play with, but there's also the fluidity and the accuracy. Where we're trying the risky passes on not a great evening, they're mainly sticking. So yeah, some really good rugby from us on Saturday night.
I think as well that some of the options that we were running previously, when Cardiff have gone, we want to play fast, expansive rugby. It's been a bit kind of ship it along the line to the wing as quickly as possible, and they've got the whole defence drifting across onto them. I thought if you look at Thomas's try, I think the variety of passes and carries leading up to that, pulling it back sometimes, going flat, other times offloading, just led to that defence not sure whether to drift, which they did, not sure whether someone was going to come inside, and it just allowed that gap to open up that Ben went through and scored. So I think for the entire game, we were mixing it up. We weren't always pulling it back. We weren't always just one-up drive. And I think that variety just kept the defence on their toes. They weren't quite sure who was going to get the ball. And then you had, what really impressed me, sometimes what we didn't do, we didn't force an offload to build up to Winnett's try. Some lovely close offloads as well. So I think, Steve, it doesn't feel like risk because you're so close, that you can, if you can get your hands away, there's somebody there and you can get it to them. But Lawrence going down with that ball after, you know what it's like. There's a bit of, like Harlem Globetrotters, everyone's offloading. Let's try the final magic offload for like the try of the season. He went down with the ball and we rucked it. Our ruck speed was really quick as well. We were getting the ball back quickly and then the simple try. So not forcing it, it felt really structured. As you say, Steve, it felt like everyone knew what they were doing. Everyone knew what calls were coming and we executed because there was just that structure around the game. And I think that's what, for me, took the game away from the Lions, because defensively, they just didn't know where the threat was going to come from. And that threat was executed really well.
Yeah, Diane used to use a phrase quite often. We keep going for double top every time. Basically meaning when we get an opportunity, when we get into the 22, we're trying to force it. You haven't had that sense in that game. We're confident that we're making the right decisions, that there's going to be players there who aren't going to force it, who know when to go to ground, know when there's going to be support with them. It's feeling a lot more well-oiled than it has previously. And it's picking up where we left off last season.
Yeah, the offloading game in particular, I thought it was the best like deliberate offloading game that we've had in a while, because we've always had skillful players who've produced moments of magic, but there felt like there was sort of method to the support lines that we were running, and there was Alex Mann in particular chucking out some brilliant offloads, which he didn't have to particularly look. He sort of knew there would be a support player there, and that got us moving in games, in times where I think last season we might have just ended up shipping it to the wide channels and poking a kick through behind, or box kick in there. We were able to keep hold of the ball a lot more, and although the defence was good, we made significantly less tackles than we have done in a lot of wins that we made last season then as well. It was pretty much 50-50 possession and territory, which we're not going to go from a team which has very little possession and very little territory to one that dominates it overnight, but it's certainly a progression in that area. Simon, you've mentioned Millard already. I know you mentioned him in the WhatsApp group as well, so I had this question down for you because of that. But Andrew on social media said Lawrence was outstanding. Reese said Beetham super sub. There was a number of players that stood out on the night, just beyond the guys like Alan Lawrence and Cam Winnett, who won the individual awards.
Yeah, I mean, I think McNally, I think he took over the captaincy, or was he captain? He took over the captaincy when Belcher
talking
went
at the
off,
red card bit, yeah.
Just really clever captaincy, I think, in the referee's ear, but not in an aggressive way, clarifying decisions, constantly talking to the referee. I think something that we've lacked sometimes in that leadership is having a leader in that kind of Sam Warburton role of just being respectful and challenging, and can you check on this, can you check on that, and wanting clarity on decisions. And I think it doesn't directly influence the referee, but I think it does sometimes give a bit of leeway. I thought he was excellent, other than the penalty he gave away for just pushing over the scrum half, which was just never going to get away with.
I remember he stopped Alex Mann from like confronting him with the Lions, so he just like pushed him away. It's like that's good captaincy right there.
That's not the first time he's had to do that.
Yeah. So I think again we know what we've got with him, but I thought he was excellent, just wading through rucks as well, being an irritant. The other one that I thought was Sebastian. I thought he had a really solid game. I think he offered something that we haven't had with many tight heads, which is real go forward mobility, ball carrying, and we've always been light with big ball carriers, and I think that's where having those options does hold a defence, because they don't know who's going to get it. And I thought offloading was really good, physical around the park. His scrummaging wasn't too bad, considering the size of his opposite number on the tight head side, I guess. But there was a lot of weight going through that pack. Put it that way. So I thought he had a really good performance. It's difficult to pick out one, as you said, Fraser. Sheedy's kicking, but his all-round game that we saw last season, I think, has come on again. I genuinely think the competition between him and Lloyd is going to push them both on further. I think Winnett got the actual man of the match, but I think for me, I was watching the game back, and at 78 minutes, I don't know whether it was Lloyd or Sheedy kicked the ball through, and there were 5 Cardiff players on one Lions player in his 22, and he had to shank the ball out. Obviously, we then overthrew the line out because we're Cardiff. But I think that just shows that deep into the game, we were still hungry to chase down and put pressure on, even though the game was won. And I think it just shows that kind of team performance. And just mention for Dan Thomas, his turnover, again, really close to the end. I think we botched a line out maybe, or something like that, or something happened, knocked on, but was there hunting, got the turnover, and I think again we overthrew the line out. But there's a theme here. Yeah. So I think there were standout individuals. Josh Adams got through so much work on that wing, going forward, and defensively, and I think what we wanted was the senior players to stand up and take that mantle of, even though Jock is gone, we know what we're doing. And I think Josh Adams gave a really good interview before the week before the game to kind of go, don't worry about it, we've got all this. There's a legacy that we're protecting. So, I think across the team, there were just really solid performances, but you could pick a number, probably pick everyone. I'll let Dan talk about Jacob Beetham at 12, because I know he's been waiting to do this for about, 2 or 3 years. So I'll let you talk about that one, Dan.
Oh, not much to say from my end, really. Just a big old sticker saying "I told you so" on my forehead as we sit here. But no, I thought he looked so composed coming on for a guy who hasn't played much rugby at all, really, the last few years, and hasn't had a huge amount of time in the saddle at 12. But he still looks like he's growing physically as well. It looks like he's had a really good preseason there. He was really took on that ball carrying role at first receiver, and there was a really nice pass he plays out for Millard on the right wing to break down sort of midway through the second half as well, which he's always had that. He come through as a fly half. He's got that creativity in his locker. We didn't see much of his boot, but we know we can fall back on that if we need to as well. Yeah. And interestingly, later in the pod, I'll ask the question of whether we should actually start a fullback after all of this, going through whether he should play inside centre or not. But I think just on a general level, it was great to see him back on the field and looking fit and healthy, and hopefully we get plenty of that from him through this season. Of course, the reason he was on the pitch was because Ben Thomas got sent off. Mart's on Blue Sky, his 3 words were, "Benny is innocent." Fraser, give us your view of the red card generally.
It's a tricky one. I think it's ultimately harsh because he got really low. It's basically a situation of what can you really do to counter ruck in that position when the opposition player is so low to the ground. His shoulder did make contact with the guy's head, so technicality, they've gone through that and they said red card. And I guess it's the reality of the rules that are in place is that if a player has got that low and is there competing, then you've got to think of different ways to get him out of the way as opposed to just straight on. But then that's difficult, obviously, because you don't want to do a croc roll. So it is just, I think it's what the rules have created a situation where you've kind of got to accept the ball is lost in that situation as opposed to going in to compete, which I don't know how you teach that to a player because that's not natural to just let something go. So, it was disappointing that he got the red card. I was a bit surprised when it did get upgraded because it wasn't malicious, I don't think. I think it was just the angles resulted in his shoulder going to the head. But I think it is just an unfortunate reality of where the rules are to protect head injuries, and luckily we dealt with it well, and the bench was suitable enough that we could replace Ben, and it didn't impact us too much. So I guess that's my 2 cents. I think it's just unlucky. I feel for Ben Thomas, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, what else could have happened?
I think we were also lucky in the build up to their try. If they hadn't scored there, the referee had just said next one's a yellow card, and I think Bowen had knocked on the goal line for an interception as well that he just kind of played on from, which was just said was a knock on. So I think on not on balance, but we could have been down to 13 men and it conceded a penalty try at that point. Fortunately, our scrum realised that and splintered and allowed the Lions to score the try in a bit of tactical genius. But as you said, Dan, in the group chat, how much lower can he get? I'm all for not, head contact it's got to be taken out of the game as much as possible. The 20-minute red card, I think, is, as you say, we're all supportive of it because there was an injustice on this one, but actually, does it really discourage head contact? I don't think it does. The one thing I would say is that the reaction of the South African player is something that I don't really think we want to see in rugby. There's one thing drawing attention to, he has been hit in the head, he's been caught undoubtedly, but it all felt a bit overblown in terms of what happened next. And I think we don't want to see that. If it's a red card, it's a red card. I thought we were brilliant for the 20 minutes, to be honest. We kept them out. Previously we would have gone to pieces and been chasing the game. I think quickly after that we won 2 penalties out wide in our own defense. It was just a really good management. I think if you were the Lions coaching staff, you're like, why have we only scored 10 points and only really had a couple of entries into the 22? I thought we did so well to make them work incredibly hard for their score. There was a couple in the corner being held up, knock-ons. We did win it kicking the ball out of the. I think the only line break I remember them making was their outside centre, and he got his foot round and, whether deliberately or not, kicked the ball out of his hand. So, but I think as soon as the head contact was made, my thought was, okay, he's going to upgrade this. If you're sympathetic, you go, it's a yellow card. He was low. There was no way in which it was intentional, because you see him coming in. He's not. It is unintentional contact. He's not targeting the head. It's just the way in which he's come in, and also the angle that the line scrum half was entering the ruck at, should we say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want to come over all rugby values, but I really dislike it when players make a meal of that sort of thing, because it's a deliberate attempt to get someone sent off. And I think that crosses the line in terms of acceptable behaviour. Yeah, Ben Thomas can't get any lower. I think realistically his only option there is to just not hit the ruck. And can he make that split-second decision when he's already committed?
He doesn't come from far either, Steve. He's not like running a distance. He's quite close to it.
Yeah, it's a harsh one. In other games, the trouble is, even though we've had this attitude to head contact quite rightly in the game for must be about 10 years now, there's still inconsistencies. I can see other referees just letting that go. I can also see it being a yellow. On balance, head contact has to be taken out of the game, so there should have been some punishment for it, but it is a harsh red, I feel.
It drew some comparisons online to the Jack Morgan incident in the end of the second test in Australia, where nothing was given on that occasion. They had a look at it and it was allowed to stand, and obviously that drew some backlash from Aussie media. But I would just say, I think the Lions player, his only intention there is to kill the ball going into that ruck. He's not supporting his own weight. He's entered from the side. Whatever, I don't, Benny's got very little time to react there. I don't think you can have the presence of mind in that split second to go, oh, hang on, I'm only going to make contact with his head here. Let me just stand up. But I do think there's potentially an argument to say maybe the Lions player should still be yellow carded for killing the ball, and that acts as the deterrent then to stop players just flopping down. If you stop that player flopping down on top of it, that's how you realistically get rid of that head contact, because I don't know what else Ben Thomas can do there. The other thing I'd say, which is slightly against Cardiff in this scenario and more of a reflection of the URC potentially rushing in changes to their refereeing guidelines and 20-minute red cards and bunker reviews, is that when issuing the red card, the referee describes Ben Thomas as always illegal, which on the URC's own website specifically states if a player is always illegal, that should be a full red card and not a 20-minute red card. So I don't. Once again, it's a case of URC refereeing making up as you go along. Maybe you could put it down to the fact that he is speaking in his second language and that he struggled to describe it some other way. But yeah, just it's I think it's a issue for the league to sort out their refereeing protocols, and also just rugby is backing itself into a bit of a corner there where there's not really, they're not stamping out head contacts and they're not really stamping out foul play. They're just handing out a lot of cards and then demoting the red card to not really a sanction by making it a 20-minute red card then as well. So yeah, I don't. It's a podcast for that probably demands that as the sole topic for by people with more willing to discuss that than I certainly do.
Does rap have space for a disciplinary panel podcast?
Yeah, and, well, talking of rap, they had Ben Breakspear on, who was the assistant on my side, the South Terrace side in that first half, and the referees went down to look at the screen. They turned around and went back to hand out the punishment, and Ben Breakspear's raised eyebrow and puffed cheek suggests that he didn't necessarily agree with the sanction, which at the time was a yellow and bunker review either. Maybe he thought it was a straight red, but I got the impression more that he thought it could have just been notched up as a rugby incident and allowed to proceed. But again, well, they'll have to get him back on the wrap and ask him that. Maybe they could do a regular referee's corner. He could be the new Nigel Owens and just slagging them off and getting in trouble for that.
I think it does show, though, how important that 20 minutes is. If it is the 20-minute red card, as I said, I think the Lions got 10 points out of it. I can't be sure. 10, we've had Wales have had 20-minute red cards, I think, or I've seen them where our sides have not got anywhere near racking up the points they need. It just showed that period. If we are having that this season, if there is a 20-minute red card, you've got to make the most of it, because the Lions didn't, and we just came back in and controlled the game out. So I think there's something there for coaches to think about how you do that in a really controlled way and don't start throwing the ball around and getting isolated and giving silly penalties away. But if we're playing against 14 men for 20 minutes, you need to be racking up some scores.
I tell you what, we won't.
Yeah, probably.
When that time does come. Steve, obviously been a lot of positives, but Conor Van Zyl was sort of tempered expectations afterwards by saying there's still a lot to work on. What do we think you meant there? Where do we need to get better looking ahead to Munster and the season generally?
Well, I mean, we need there's the line out, and the line out is still the thing that he's focused on just as a coach, and that went wrong a few times. That's something which we do need to fix. You're going to have a few glitches early in the season, but yeah, that is something we need to put right. The penalty count in general, I'll put aside my general misgivings about URC referees, but we were on the wrong end of the penalty count again, despite being strong side for much of the game. We need to put that right. On the disciplinary side, I think having Alex Mann and McNally in your team, you are always going to concede a few penalties, but that is something that is going to really come back to bite us in other games.
I also thought high ball wise we were quite poor as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Not like Lions, obviously, whenever we play the South Africans, they kick very well, and their back threes are unbelievably athletic as a general rule. But I don't particularly obviously Adams before the second try on our attacking kick, but defensive receiving kicks, I don't particularly recall us actually winning an aerial duel during the course of the game. So that's somewhere which better teams than the Lions will capitalize on.
That's something teams will probably target. Yeah, I mean, it may be that also that it was a particularly bad night for the high kicks because there was a constant. I'm not sure if it was clear on TV, but there was pretty much a constant drizzle coming down for much of the game. Wasn't much of the wind, but the ball was slippery. I think possibly a problem we're going to have through the season, and I'm not saying we should make a selection change, but Cam Winnett is obviously going to be our fullback. I'm not sure if this is what you're going to come to with the Jacob Beetham thing.
It is a little bit.
Yeah. It looks like Tom Bowen is installing himself on the left wing, and if it isn't him, then it's going to be perhaps Theo Cabango or Owen Stevens when they come back to fitness. Those are two pretty small players. So we're going to need someone. I'm kind of stealing the bit you're going to do later on that, but we're going to need at least someone else in that back three who's pretty big. Arguably too. Got Josh Adams in there. and he did a good job. But yeah, it's likely to be something else that teams will target. But on Tom Bowen, I mean, there were a couple of wobbly moments with the kicks, but I thought with his general play, because we didn't really get to see much of his USP of his stepping, but I thought his general play, perhaps other than the high kicks, was really strong. We saw more of his kicking game, which I thought was impressive. Um, and he, despite those wobbles and under the high balls, I mean, he's a very little guy. I mean, particularly when you go to the game and see him in person, he's absolutely tiny. Um, but he didn't. I mean, I think it's his fifth game at this level, and he's 19 years old. He's incredibly assured.
Yeah, he puts well, I think it might have actually been given as a 50-22, but then Cardiff sort of won a penalty from it anyway because the Lions threw the ball away. But the camera, I watched it back afterwards, and the camera pans back to him, and he not only puts the kick through and we win the penalty, but he's sort of running up the field, driving the forwards to get there quickly and play the balls. Like, I think most 19-year-olds probably wouldn't be, especially small 19-year-old wingers, wouldn't be sort of even talking to the forwards on the pitch. But he's somebody there driving them on up the field by himself.
That was a big moment in the game, wasn't it? Because I think that came from Jacob Beatham's
Yeah.
interception, and I think that's another thing to say about Beatham. It's his first. I mean, he played a little bit there against Leinster in pre-season, but it's his first game at 12. His first game at that level for some time because of the number of injuries he's had, and to not look only comfortable at 12, but have the confidence to not only see the interception but go for it. And that was possibly a bit of a game-changing moment that really sucked the wind out of the Lions' sails. So yeah, two
Uh,
two young players looking very, very assured.
Absolutely. Last bit on this one then, Simon. Cornel van Zyl, first game in as official head coach. We don't really know who was leading it when Jockey was away last season, but Cornel is in charge now. A slight change in substitution policy, perhaps, from the Matt Sherratt days, where more often than not we didn't see the bench emptied. This time, obviously, there was the enforced changes with Belcher going off early and Beetham having to come on for Ben Thomas, but both props, Ben Donnell and Ali Davis, were on by the hour mark, and the bench was empty then by the 70-minute mark. What do we think of that difference in tactic?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's horses for courses, there's a bit of had to make two changes relatively early. So maybe recognizing that we've played with 14 men for 20 minutes, maybe legs are a bit heavy, but I didn't really feel that Man was slowing down at all. I think it was a great decision to bring on Donald, because just that extra line out option. I mean, our lineouts, they were overthrows. I think that's what frustrated me. If our lineouts getting picked off, you kind of go, okay, they've worked it out. But that's just technically either getting the call wrong or just not technically managing to hit your jumper. So, there's definitely something to work on there. But all the substitutions seem to come. The only slight strange one was win it for Lloyd, which I didn't know whether was just give him some game time. Maybe if we need a penalty, slightly more better percentage kicker. But the other ones made sense completely. And as you say, we've often called for substitutions. I think once the Lions' tight head went off, I think we felt we could get a bit more parity in the scrum as well. So let's. I don't know whether those substitutions happened before or after that. Let's get some fresh legs on. I think one of the different, just kind of generally, what a difference actually taking a restart and clearing your lines makes. Because we go into the league last season, we'd fumble a restart, concede a penalty, knock on, turn it, whatever, and we're back on our heels. Whereas I think we were pretty much perfect on restarts in terms of getting it, recycling it, and clearing our lines sometimes really well, pushing them back up to halfway. It's such a simple thing, but it's something that we've seemed to have struggled with season after season. We take it at the point where we went 21-20 up. We went the Cardiff way is to knock that on, drop it, or all look at each other while the ball bounces into a Lions player's hands and we concede a penalty and suddenly we're behind again. So I think that, but I thought it's almost like the time Jockeys had with the WRU has really benefited this decision. because there have been extended periods where that coaching team has essentially had to get on with it. The players have had to accept that and listen to those different voices. I don't think much has changed. So there is that continuity. I'm sure, as he said, he'll want to tighten some things up, change it. Got a big game next weekend, this weekend coming. But for what more could you ask? 5 points made some sense, but had to deal with adversity as well. And we came through it, and fair play to him. I said well done after the game. He doesn't give much away. But I'm sure he'll be pleased with it. But they're all, I think they'll all be looking for those little, as Steve said, those bits that didn't quite go right. How do we tighten them up? It's going up a level or two, probably three, on Saturday. So yeah, but I think he'll be pleased with it, and the continuity is there for all to see. I didn't see any difference between how we were playing against Richmond, Leinster, and the Lions. I think if we take that into next weekend, it's going to be tough, but we need to be brave there as well, I think.
Good stuff. Seems like a good spot to end that review of the Munster game on. We move on to a bit of the news now, and as much as Simon is a prodigal son on this podcast, the actual one I was referring to, of course, is that Lee Halfpenny was announced as officially returning to the club last week. And we mentioned on the pod this week that thanks to Worcester's social media team, we all knew he'd been hanging around for a little while and accidentally tweeting of this photo. But the club have confirmed he's back on a short-term deal, initially as a kicking coach while he recovers from a calf injury. I understand that if he does recover from that, he'll take on a player/coach contract for the rest of the season. But if he doesn't quite recover from that in time, I suspect the answer then is he just calls it a day and goes to the coaching full time. The only slight risk, I think, is that with it currently being a short-term one, wouldn't be a massive surprise to me if Mr. Tandy picked up the phone if Halfpenny didn't fancy playing this season and Halfpenny was back in the national team, nicked somebody else from us, and Halfpenny was back in there. But for now, he returns and hopes to add to his 568 points from his 87 games he got early in his career. Obviously, he's been off all over the shop, Scarlets, Toulon, Crusaders, Harlequins. But Fraser, I mean, it's great to see him back, isn't it?
Yeah, I think overall you can question like the fact that we have other positions that maybe more in need of strengthening, but I think a player of that stature and experience who's like you've just listed off the clubs he's played for, let alone all the international experience, he must have gained a lot in those experiences, and clearly is very process driven and has a very good way of like looking at kicking and like the practicing and like kind of developing his skill set, and to have that opportunity for players like I don't know, well, like Winnett and Beetham are two young like fullback kind of players that he can kind of impart his knowledge on. Also, is it coincidence that Sheedy's kicking was a lot better? He'd been there for a day and it's already making an impact. But like, I think he's going to help with the kicking of the team. He's got experience in that coaching side of things, and if he did play, like if that does occur, I wouldn't be worried about him stepping in, and like he's going to be solid. He's going to do a job. So that's a nice thing to kind of have up your sleeve if needed. So yeah, I mean overall it's really positive, and also he's a very handsome man, so it's good to just look at a handsome man occasionally. So yeah, positive I think.
He did look extremely handsome as he ran the tee out on Saturday
Did.
night. I think that yeah, like you said, the young players. There, Griff on the Cardiff Age Reading Academy Twitter posted some pics of academy training last week and noted there were some Cardiff legends helping out, and it was Halfpenny just chatting to Lloyd Lucas and going through some kicking with him in the background. First year out of under 18s into the senior academy. I mean, it's not going to be many better people to learn from than Lee Halfpenny if you're starting out your kicking at a senior level. So I think that is romantically it'd be great to see him back on the pitch at some point, but that's where the real value for Halfpenny coming back will be, I think, day in day out, getting in the ears of Sheedy a bit, but mainly those young guys coming through the pathway system. Other bit of news this week, CF10 Arms Park Rugby Trust sent out an email on Monday, I think it was, basically giving an overview of their meeting with the WRU as part of the ongoing consultation into the restructuring of the professional game. Included the briefing pack, the PowerPoint slides, and the WRU summary of the meeting. Steve, in your other hat as CF10 board member, you were there. What give us the summary and just some thoughts from yourself of how it went.
Yeah, so first of all, for members, if you haven't seen it already in the email, you'll get the WRU summary of the meeting plus the presentation materials we use, and that should give you a good flavour of what we offered. And I suppose, first of all, you have to give some credit to the WRU here because I'm confident that previous iterations of the WRU wouldn't have had this consultation process. And if they did, they may not necessarily have brought supporters groups in. I thought the meeting itself was very cordial and they responded well to everything we had to say. It was, I felt I got the sense that they were genuinely listening. Um, and judging by the news that came out just before we started recording, well, not news, but Steph Thomas's article in Wales Online, it does seem like they're moving away from what they were calling their optimal system. So they do seem to have genuinely listened to everybody. Also have to give a lot of credit to members because we had a survey, we surveyed our members. We had an open meeting with our members where all the members showed a lot of passion and showed that we have a lot of very articulate members in CF10. And when we put our presentation together, we were basically guided by that. Our members were saying that they don't really trust the WRU. Our members were saying they want to get back into private ownership as soon as possible. Our members want there to be a women's team at the Arms Park, and so on, so on. You can read it all in the pack. And we brought that to the WRU, and I thought they responded really positively. So it's been, yeah, it's been a really valuable process.
That's good to hear. And yeah, like you said, Steph Thomas has put out that this as the consultation finishes tomorrow. I think today is the last day it's officially open. Well, as we're recording on Tuesday evening. That they seem to be considering going towards a three-team model of 2+1. So if we end up as the +1, then we march on CF10 for them signing up to this somehow in that consultation meeting. But no, it's I'm sure there'll be plenty of other news stories and leaks and whispers over the next few weeks until the WRU actually decide and announce what they're going to do as well. I think the plan is by the end of October for them to have done that. Obviously, they've got a lot of stuff to go through after the consultation because judging by those weekly updates they've done, they've met with a lot of people and got a lot of feedback. So, we'll wait and see on that one. I'm sure the rap guys will cover it sort of week to week as news comes out. We'll mostly just pick it up when there's actually something solid that has come out. Because if we sort of responded to every leak that came out, I think we'd have to do about 8 specials a week at this point. So. But yeah, that's good stuff. Good from CF10 getting that out there as well. If you aren't a member, once again, I would say sign up and ask for them to send it over. It's incredibly detailed stuff, but it is all very interesting. Um, Final piece of news then, just from this week. Alex Cuthbert officially retired. I don't think he's played for 18 months, so I don't know. We can just all start announcing that we're retiring as well. But he has officially hung his boots up. Obviously, an academy graduate at Cardiff. Still sits second on the post 2003 try scorer list with 46. After leaving us, went on to Exeter and Ospreys and won 50 Wales caps and was a Test Lion in 2013. So best of luck to him. Obviously, we still see him plenty in the media with his Sport in Wales stuff and on telly as well. But a great career. Like whilst all that stuff was going on with Wales, there was obviously a lot of criticism. I always felt that he turned up and just gave everything for Cardiff, and I think that's certainly appreciated by fans on the terraces. Um, Rags Corner then won't dwell on this because, as I mentioned in the pod, at the top of the pod, it is not a happy place. The Rags went down 60-20 to Ebbw Vale at Eugene Cross Park. Relatively close for sort of 35 minutes or so. Gavin Parry and Joe Goodchild scored early tries, but a penalty try and a yellow card quickly led to another Ebbw try. So they were comfortably up at the break, and then the second half was just a bit of a hammering. Goodchild got a second as a consolation try, but the Steelmen scored 4 tries in the last 15 minutes or so to take the game away. It's the most points the Rags have conceded in a game since shipping 63 to RGC in May 2019. But fortunately, they get a chance to do it all over again on Saturday as Ebbw Vale arrive at the Arms Park in the fourth round of the Super Rugby Cymru. Do get down and support them if you can. I thought Fishy, they put a clip up of him speaking after the game, and he spoke quite well about, we do have players missing, and we've got a young squad, but hopefully this is the wake up call that they can't just wallow in the fact that we've got players missing. They have to stand up and take a bit of responsibility. And as mentioned, guys like Lloyd Lucas and Reese Cummins, first year out of the academy, it's a bit of a wake up call for them. Hopefully the coaching staff and the senior players can get around them a bit, and they can use it as a learning experience and hit back on the weekend. At this point of the pod, then, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, do feel free to subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you're on. Leave us a rating and a nice comment. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the Rap channel. All the pods are back up and properly running now. The clubs, the Rap, the SRC guys, and go over to the Global Gainline channel as well, where there's hundreds of podcasts across all different leagues and teams. The URC Rewind guys, obviously Simon has got beef with after they didn't rate our kit very highly. I mean, they've never heard of Billy the Seal, Simon. Do we just hate listen to them all the time?
I know.
Just poor stuff. But do continue to listen to them, but just remember that they don't know who Billy the Seal are. And give the Women's Rugby Treehouse a listen as well this week as they wrap up the final weekend of the Women's Rugby World Cup. Maybe not the result we were hoping for. I think everyone secretly quite enjoys it when the Red Roses lose, but a great competition nonetheless. And it's been great to see the growth of the women's game over the last couple of weeks. Right, final part of the pod, previewing this Saturday's game. Cardiff go to Munster, 7:45 kickoff on Saturday night at Thomond Park. If you wanted to watch it on telly, it's only on Premier Sports, this one, because why would S4C show away games? No one can get there, so there's no point watching them. Cardiff beat Munster last season, 26-21 at the Arms Park in late April. Bonus point win as part of that late surge towards the playoffs. Munster got their season up and running with a 21-34 bonus point win at Parker Scarlets on Saturday afternoon. They have had a bit of a change over the summer, with former Chiefs coach Clayton McMillan taking over from Graham Roundtree in charge. My weather forecast last week was decent. The rain was a bit heavier than I forecast, but I did say it would be wet, and it was. This week I've just got windy in capital letters. It looks incredibly windy over in Ireland on Saturday. It's going to be a bit rainy as well, but it's going to be a tough one elements wise if the forecast stays as it is. Fraser, games between Cardiff and Munster, although we don't necessarily win too many of them, they've always been historically quite enjoyable, I fancy.
Yeah, they have, and they've been quite close games, or at least in recent years, they've always been quite close to scoring it or whatever. I mean, I think we generally don't come out on top, but obviously last time we did, like you referenced, I mean, a windy, wet weather doesn't really indicate it's going to be a fun game, but it could. I mean, it could be a bit wild, lots of fumbles in midfield or whatever. But yeah, it should. I mean, it's a tricky one. I would love to see a victory, but I mean, Munster getting a bonus point victory away to Scarlets is quite worrying start for them, I guess, or like worrying for us seeing that. I think I didn't see the match, but apparently their centres look quite good. So that's obviously a bigger test of like maybe Millard, and I guess we'll see if we go for Beethan at 12. It's kind of like we're going to have quite a makeshift 12 and 13 up against their centres. So see what happens there. And yeah, I guess I get a test of our defence and how well it looked last time. And this is definitely a stronger opposition in difficult. If we trust your weather forecasting, which I think everyone should just listen to this pod for weather forecasting. It's clearly very accurate. It'll be a more difficult test. I'll be interested to see how we stand up to that. I think with the power that Munster generally bring, and especially as wet and windy, it might be a close game and like quite head forward centric. So that might be something that we struggle with, or it might just be exemplify how much we've progressed over the off season and into the new season.
Steve, how do we think we can get at them on Saturday night?
Um, I, I don't think it's a question of finding weaknesses in Munster. I think it's more a question of doing what we do well, and putting our attack in place and seeing how they react to it. I don't see any reason why we should go there thinking, oh, it's Munster and they're going to bring this and that. I think we should look to bring it to them.
Simon, the argument the potentially is that of the 5 games in this opening block, this is sort of on paper the one that maybe I don't know. It's possibly you could say it's the hardest. You could also say it's the one that maybe matters the least in terms of if you win your home games and then you win your Welsh derbies, you're looking in a good spot. Obviously, we've got 2 home games and then an away Welsh derby at the Dragons to follow that. Is there any argument that, and we haven't really got a huge amount of depth to do this too much, but that we do go there and rotate and rest a few and give them a chance to go into it fresh-legged against Connacht the following week?
Yeah, well, I think if last season teaches us anything, it's that we should never suggest when they rest players and don't rest players, because even though the stellar picking of the panel last week, the coaches always do the opposite. And I too have missed your weather reports from various far-flung parts of the URC. I think there was so much positive about that performance, and I think how we handled the Lions in midfield. If we can do that to Munster will bring a different shape. But I think if we can, I don't go there thinking maybe in years gone by, when we've gone to teams like Munster and thought, oh, we're just going to get beaten up. Just going to get beaten up and we'll ship 40 and maybe we'll get a losing bonus point because we'll score 4 tries when they've emptied their bench or something like that. I don't think this side, even towards the end of last season, is going to be as physically dominated as some Cardiff sides have previously. And that's taken into account, I think, as you were saying, Steve, we haven't got a big backline. None of them. But Adams maybe is slightly taller and is slightly bigger. But actually, none of them are particularly physically dominant. But that didn't stop them, because I think the back row, and maybe it's something we didn't touch on, was Basham's mobility as well, to get out into midfield, and Mann's ability to get out into midfield and make those tackles. And, Sebastian's a big guy. I don't think he'll start at the weekend. Maybe I think maybe we might see some rotations with the props. Maybe see Donnell come in with Teddy. I don't know, but I'm with Steve. I think you just go out there and go. It's not a free hit, because I think we can challenge them there. They will now know that we can challenge. I think a couple of times when we've gone out to Irish sides like Connacht or Leinster in the last few seasons, I think they've taken their foot off the gas and thought, oh no, we can just win this. It's kept us in those games. I think they will know, actually, they're probably going to have a game on their hand. They're going to have to pick a strongish side, do the basics really well, which Irish sides always do, incredibly difficult to get the ball off them. And they'll be incredibly physical. I think I didn't see, like you, Fraser, I was on my way to the game and I only caught bits of the Scarlets game. It looked quite easy for Munster at points. It looked like the Scarlets tend to look in the first few games of the season like they haven't had a pre-season and they're all a bit rusty. So again, you don't know how much Munster feel that was a good run out. Have they had the same sort of run out that we've had? But yeah, I think we can. I don't think we go there quaking in our boots. So my view would be we pick the strongest side we can and you go out to win games. I can't see Van Zyl taking the approach of or Gethin of, oh, let's just not worry about this and come back, because we're then at home to Connacht. We get a hammering out in Munster. That puts huge pressure on a game that we lost 4 times last season. And then we're away to the Dragons, who obviously are going to win the URC because they've recruited really well. So, but that's going to be a really tough game at Rodney Parade on a Friday night. They're going to be, the ex-Cardiff players there, they're going to be really up for it. So I don't think we can take our foot off the pedal, because what's to come might be a little bit easier than Munster away, but it's not gimmies. So I would just keep building.
Munster are still without the Lions. There's no Tyburn last week. JJ Hanrahan, who is somehow still going. I'm sure he like left Dragons to just retire slowly like 10 years ago, and he's somehow back at Munster. But he went off with HIA and will be going through the return to play protocol, so probably won't feature this weekend. From a Cardiff point of view, definitely out are James Botham, Ewan Stevens, Theo Cabango, Mason Grady, Elijah Evans, Matty Young, and Harry Wild. Unlikely to be available Ben Thomas, assuming that he takes some sort of ban after his red card, and Liam Belcher, who failed his HIA after looked like he got whacked by a knee to the head when that guy jumped off the back of the line out to claim the free ball early in the first half. So he's likely to be on a 12-day return to play protocol as well. We still don't really know much about Corey Domachowski, George Knott, or Talupe Faletau. No obvious sign that any of them are definitely training or not. But it seems Ed Byrne is pretty close to being back fit. I didn't actually catch the warm-up on Saturday, but by the time I rocked up in my spot, he was doing a lot of extra running behind the posts before the teams ran out. So I would suggest that he is very close to being available again to play. So with that in mind, we'll whip into our team selection. As Simon mentioned, 14 out of 15 last week for the boys, so no pressure, lads. But if you get it wrong, you're not on the coaching staff, and I'll be up with Cornel Van Zyl in the coaching box. Fraser, starting up front then. Let's assume Ed Byrne is sort of there or thereabouts, coming back in. You've got Reece Barrett and Danny Southworth, who were the loose heads in the squad last week. Is this a game where Byrne's experience might be quite handy?
I'm not sure about it because when did he last play for us? It's been like over
Before
you didn't
Christmas?
play,
Yeah, I think.
long time. Like I don't know if it's the best game to bring someone who hasn't had any game time for such a significant period of time. I think picking I know like, he is Irish, so maybe that's the reason to bring him to Ireland. He's used to it, but I think I'd probably stick with Reece Barrett. I think he was good, solid in the scrum. He's a great, he's good in the loose. I'm really impressed by Reece Barrett. I'd probably stick with the same as previous. I'm Reece Barrett and then Southworth on the bench. I think there's no impetus to put Ed Byrne in if we don't need to yet. Like we got quite a few fixtures coming up, so like save him until we need him. Because I like Southworth, I like Barrett, so why not keep with those two?
Would be might be an option for Byrne. I don't know if they take Cowell as a travelling reserve and give Byrne a run out against Ebu on Saturday or something to get him to back into it with the Rags.
Yeah.
I don't know if at his age he's that keen on running back out with the Rags or whether he just bides his time. But yeah, that could be an interesting one to watch. So Barrett and Southworth there. Steve, no Belcher at hooker likely. Straight in Evan Lloyd, or do we keep him as bench option with Dav Hughes coming in to start?
First of all, I can reveal that the Met Office app is saying that in Limerick on Saturday night it's going to be 12 degrees and dry. It'll be
Oh,
raining.
they're wrong. They're wrong.
It'll be dry. And it's pretty still in terms of the wind. Yeah, I'd start Evan Lloyd. I thought, the wonky liner decided he had a terrific game on the weekend. I think he's, over the course of the season, he's probably going to start pushing Liam Belcher for a starting place, despite Belcher being captain. So yeah, I think you start him. Also quickly on Ed Byrne, I was in time to see the warm-up, and it looked to me like he was taking a full part in the warm-up and was running with the ball, and he looks pretty fit to me, so it wouldn't surprise me if he comes into it on the weekend.
Well, if we're doing apps for weather now, then we'll have to start getting all the officials around him, won't we? Simon, tight head. I think you mentioned earlier that you're not too sure if Sebastian are going to switch Azza and Sebastian this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, I'm with Poor Dan in terms of weather forecasting. Okay, yeah, I just didn't know whether that would be the routine of you'd have one starting and then one coming on. I thought. I mean, Azza kicked the ball out for the win. It was very much a tight head type kick as well. If I've had enough of this, it's raining. Get it off the pitch and everyone in. But
it was very Peter Kay and the John Smith ads, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But I think you could go with either of them. I just think if we've got Wainwright as well, who I'm assuming is fit, there's no reason that maybe there is a bit of rotation to keep. We can do that maybe this season. I don't think, as I say, I don't think Sebastian did anything wrong. I thought he was very good, and
He did a good step
yeah,
for a break, which
and
is impressive,
really,
isn't it?
really good offloading as well. But I think what Lloyd gives you is that. I mean, he's big. You really see it when he comes on for Belcher about the size difference, and he should, be helping us lock out a scrum a bit more maybe than he does at the moment. So I'd be interested to kind of, I don't know what scrummaging stats look like really, but so yeah, I think I'd probably go with Azarati to start. And then I think it's a toss of a coin really between Sebastian and Wainwright on the bench. I don't think I'd feel particularly, it'd be a big step, not a big step, but for Wainwright to play his first game out in Tormund Park for us might be quite a thing. But we brought him in to have that depth. So, if you're targeting the Connaught game a little bit, I think you can pick any of those three. But what Azarati doesn't give you is like that ball carrying and that mobility that maybe Wainwright and Sebastian do. So maybe start him, make sure the scrum's solid early on, and bring one of the others off the bench.
I mean, if anyone wants to argue against McNally and Teddy in second row, feel free to step forward now. But Fraser, I think we'll skip those two and go on to back row. I guess blindside continues to be a bit of a shootout between Mann and Donnell. But with the provider that if Faletau is fit, is there an argument to shift Lawrence to six and play them both in the back row?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if Faletau is fit, yeah, I think you just have to play him because you don't know how fit he's going to be for how long, and then he might be away with Wales. So it's like you got to make the most of Faletau. You can't. I don't think you can pick and choose what games he plays in unless he decides he's just like, nah, I don't want to go to Munster. I'll play next week, which he probably has the right to do at this point. So, but I don't know. Man got a break. Like he was taken off fairly early, around 60 minutes. Was it last week against Lions? So and he played really well. So I'm not sure. But then a Big Al played really well. I'd probably stick with Man at blindside. And I think number 8. I think if Faletau is fit, I'd start him. But Big Al was great, so I wouldn't be averse to Man and Big Al at 8, and then I think Tame Bash played pretty well at 7. Dan Thomas is great off the bench, but yeah, I think I'd stick with Alex Mann at 6 for sure.
I do just wonder whether, because of the line-out difficulties that we had, whether he'll go for Donnell at 6, just to have another option. Munster always, actually, their line-out wasn't that great, was it? when last season when we played them, but usually, and I just wonder whether they would want to just mix it up a little bit. I haven't seen Man particularly as a line-out option. Not saying that he can't do it, but I just wonder whether they'll go for that and just have that little extra opportunity, that little extra option that if we are under pressure at the line out, we've got a bit more variety on it. That'll be the only reason, because I thought Man was again excellent.
Steve, I don't know if you've got a casting vote in you.
I mean, I think with Alex Mann, it's either the perfect game for him or the worst possible game for him because he's really taking the lead on the shithousery and becoming our Peter O'Mahony, and that might be absolutely perfect for a game at Thomond Park. It might also be a card waiting to happen, and I think I think that might be why he was left out of the Munster game at the end of last season. I may be wrong, but I think they may have made the calculation that a Man against Omani, do we need this? So yeah, I think he's quickly becoming my favorite player. So I think you got to put Alex Mann in there. See how it goes. Let's ride the wave.
Yeah, I think Simon, what you say is correct about the line. I think the other thing Munster though will offer this weekend, the back row that started against the Scarlets on the weekend was Jack O'Donoghue, Alex Kendellen, and Brian Gleeson, and O'Donoghue and Kendellen as dual open sides pretty much. I mean, they will be hard over the ball on Saturday night, and I think what man. Obviously, he's good ball carrying, but he's quickly to breakdowns and he's over the ball. It's one of those ones where you're not going to find a selection that probably ticks all of the boxes for us. But I wonder if they'll just lean towards that ball security and that breakdown a little bit more than a line out and just hope for the best, especially if Tyburn doesn't come back. They've got Klein in there, the South African is not historically known as a line out forward, especially he's more of a big hard enforcer guy. So they're looking at Fineen Wycherley really as their main line out option. So yeah, I think they might just fingers cross it at the line out and go for the open play option a bit more. Backs then, once again, sort of a number of positions that pick themselves due to injuries or just the solidity of the player in the jersey at the moment. I thought Mulder was great again. We haven't really mentioned him too much on the podcast, but the speed of ball and some of his sniping that he did, he was a great turnover as well from him. So I think he's in at 9, unless there's any call for Lloyd this weekend. I think Sheedy returns at 10. The wingers then of Bowen and Adams, I mean, there pretty much is no other option. Same for Millard at 13 at the moment. But then we come to a couple of questions that came in from Ben and Gareth about who starts at 12. We assume that Ben Thomas is out, so the options are Jacob Beetham again, but then you've also got Rory Jennings, of course, still in the squad, and Steph Emmanuel. Fraser, I'll come to you first again. We'll go round the panel on this one as well, because I suspect there might be a few different views. It could also link in with full-back selection as well, with if we are looking to secure a bit more high ball, does Beetham go in there? But who would you pick as your 12 and 15 for Saturday?
I think it's tricky. I want to see Beetham more at 12. He looks so exciting. He's the amount of potential he has as a player is quite staggering. His size, his kicking, his intelligence, like footballing skills. He obviously really reads the game quite well at times. Um, but I think maybe that might be a bit too much of a baptism of fire. I think coming off the bench at 12 is maybe a better way in. So I might be more inclined to the safe hands of, I mean, it doesn't really inspire me. I'm not sure if I believe myself when I say it, but Rory Jennings maybe being at 12, just because he's done it. He's going to be solid. He's not necessarily going to light the world up, but like I know he can play there. But then, I'm pretty sure as soon as I hear Simon or Steve's opinions, I'll just absolutely change it. But I think in fullback, I think Cam Winnett just stays there. He was good against Lions. I just think he is our starting 15. I know, like, there's that Beetham being taller, maybe better in the air. I guess Winnett does struggle sometimes in that. But it's not going to be wet and windy, so it might be easier for Winnett. So I think I'd stick with Winnett, and then 12. I'm going for Roy Jones, but I think I'm easily swayed whatever Simon and Steve say.
Steve, do you want to go?
Um, I think Beetham was. It was so good to see him kept coming in at 12 and playing so well. I mean, I think I'm inclined to keep him there. At one point, Stefan Emmanuel, I think did he have an HIA against Leinster? So he might be out.
He did, yeah. Days wise, I would assume he's back this week.
Okay.
Because there was a week off between Leinster and Lions there as well. So I think he would have been unavailable for Lions because he'd only come back into training a day or two before that, but should be able to train fully this week then.
Okay. So yeah, I'm inclined to stick with Beetham. The only thing I think is thinking about the bench. Beetham gives you so many options from the bench, and he also gives you the option where if we are struggling in the back three, we can then bring him on. So that might be something to take into account, that it could be more useful to have Beetham on the bench, although I'm sure he doesn't want to get the utility player tag. I'd be quite interested to see Steph Manuel play if he is available, because I thought he looked sharp in pre-season and I want to see a lot more of him. Um, all in all, I think got to go with Beetham again because I want to see a bit more of that. And you never know, this might be the game where we see his kicking coming into play and his long-range goal kicking. Could be a game where, having a guy who can knock over a penalty from 50 yards could be could be really useful. And as the Met Office say, it's going to be quite a still evening.
Stop repeating the Met Office.
Have we got new sponsors?
The Met Office is nothing for me sticking my head out the window and deciding. Simon, your thoughts?
I would contradict completely what I said about 10 minutes ago. I would like to see Steph Emmanuel. I just think if we're going to bring players through, it's not an easy place to go, but why not? I think it will be Jennings, possibly, because of the inexperience maybe outside him. But I just think he looks the part. He deserves, at some point to get that start. Why not? In a sense, why not do it now? It's a good baptism for him, as you say. Then, if it's not working, you've got Beetham on the bench that you can bring in with that. We've got with Lloyd and Beetham real adaptability on the bench that we can bring into different positions. But I'd just like to see us go for it. And if he's going to develop to what we all think is potential, games like this are going to be important as part of that pathway to get it done, because I can't see then where he has a start before Europe, really. Assuming no injuries, because I think the pressure is going to be on to kind of win against Connacht in week after next. So yeah, I'd go Emmanuel. What I would say also on Sheedy is his tackling was much better on Saturday as well. I know at one point the winger came kind of flying down the channel and it was a bit of a road bump, but he did stop him and sprang back up and straight back in the line. I know that was stuff that he was being criticised for early in the season. There was a bit of a revolving door targeted at fly half, but if he can up his kind of physical presence, that will help whoever's playing inside centre as well, because it won't be as much of I might have to cover 10. I can just focus on covering my own channel.
So quite brilliantly, we've got one vote for Emmanuel, one vote for Beetham, and one vote for Jennings. I have to say, there's compelling arguments for all three as well. And then, if the question was, what do you predict? I could also see them doing all three as well. I think, though, I think I'm going to have to just pick Beetham at 12 because I've spoken about it on the pod for like 2 years now. But I agree with everything you say, Simon, about Emmanuel. I just don't think there's any track record of Cardiff actually putting players in when they should be being put in. So, and I also think there is, Jennings was obviously their go-to guy last year. I did think it was interesting he wasn't on the bench last week, though. I felt like there was maybe a little bit of a statement that they are maybe slightly moving on from him. But it generally wouldn't surprise me if it was any of those. And to be honest, I could get behind any of them as well. I think there's positives to be said for all three of them, certainly. But with Beetham at 12 and Winnett at 15, that finishes our starting 15. Question then, where we did go wrong on our squad selection last week was that we went for 6-2 and that we finally got a South African head coach and he picked a 5-3 bench against the South African team. So that felt sort of backwards. We'll go for another vote, and you bet there's only 2 options this time, so you can't all vote for different things now. Fraser, 5-3 or 6-2?
I'm going back to 6-2, just because that's what that's what it was all last season. It's just I'm safe in that for now. I mean, it did 5-3 did work, and I was kind of lucky we had 5-3 based on the red card and stuff. It really worked out. But I think 6-2 this weekend.
Steve?
I'm inclined to go with 6-2. I think my question is who the 6 are going to be, because we don't have too many, assuming Faletau isn't available, we don't really have too many alternatives in the back row. Knott is probably out, so the only other guy really we can bring in to make it up to 6 is possibly Thornton. So by inclination, I'd go 6-2 out in Munster, but I can see it being 5-3.
I'm going to be contrary and go 5-3. Just because I think Beetham could play flanker if we were really sure.
Yeah, why not?
Because he did. He was the one that drove Lloyd over the line eventually.
That was noticeable.
Second try. I think if we were caught, then you could kind of go, well, physically you can handle yourself there. And I just think their versatility, I think you would. Yeah, I think if he starts, maybe we go 6-2. If he's on the bench, it's 5-3.
Well, so quite brilliantly, on the two option, Steve's voted for both, so so it's still a split panel.
We don't know, Dan. That's what we're trying to get to. We just
personally
don't know.
would go
The
with 6-2,
pressure of last week's too much.
I personally would go 6-2, but I think he will go 5-3. I think he'll stick with it. I don't see him changing up a winning formula. And I think with that in mind, we've got Hughes, Southworth, Sebastian as your replacement front row, Donnell and Thomas as your back row options. I think he'll stick with Davis and Lloyd, and then Emmanuel comes onto the bench then where we're starting Beetham. I could see them doing Jennings as the 23, but I think you do need to get Emmanuel in there. He should be ahead of Jennings realistically off the bench by now, and yeah, if that allows you then that if the worst comes to the worst, that the back three really isn't working, then you can bring Emmanuel on early and drop Beetham back into there as well. So despite the constant debate on the panel this week, we've got to a 23 of Barrett, Lloyd, Azarati, McNally, Teddy, Mann, Basham, Falatau if he's fit, but no obvious sign of that. So Lawrence, if not, Mulder, Sheedy, Bowen, Beetham, Millard, Adams, Winnett, Hughes, Southworth, Sebastian, Donald, Thomas, Ali Davis, Johan Lloyd, and Steph Emmanuel on the bench. It's it's still a good team considering there's a lot of if those players that we've mentioned aren't available, likes of Domachowski, Belcher, George Knott, Falatau, probably one of the wingers in Stevens or Cabango, definitely Ben Thomas. They're all guys who would definitely be in the strongest 23. So we're missing a couple of players. But it's still a 23 that can go out there and cause this Munster side, which isn't the Munster side of old. A few problems, I think. Gents, any other business? Anything anyone would like to raise as we end this podcast? No more Met Office updates, please, Steve. We're not interested in that.
I just want to give a shout out to the Met. No, to the Cunning Valley school system, because we've mentioned Harry Millard having a great game yet again. Tom Bowen looking assured yet again. Alex Mann being the man. And it's really good to see three guys from the Cunning Valley repping the Cunning Valley and the Cardiff side. It makes me feel warm inside.
Good stuff. Good to see. Well, gents, thank you very much. We'll be back on the pod next week. Hopefully, looking back on another victory, and hopefully Rags Corner is a bit happier next week as well. And looking ahead to the Connacht game. Until then, enjoy the game on the weekend, and we'll catch you next week.